Hi everyone, I'm Zoe and I read the article Pretty as a Princess: Longitudinal Effects of Engagement with Disney Princesses on Gender Stereotypes, Body Esteem, and Prosocial Behavior in Children. So, the main question the researchers wanted to know is what is the role of active mediation in altering the long term relation between Disney princess engagement and gender stereotyping, body esteem, and prosocial behavior? The motivation for this study is mainly based off of how big of an influence Disney has on the world. In 2012, over $3 billion were spent on Disney princess products alone. And even though this is such a big market, there's very little research on how it affects children. We know that princesses often represent women poorly in terms of body image and gender roles, in the sense that the princesses are supposed to be gentle, elegant, skinny, and have flawless skin, and they're also supposed to be submissive and tend to the house. This is similar to how Barbies are portrayed, and we know that when girls play with Barbies, it can lead to poor body image and it implies gendered stereotypes. These findings can also be applied to Disney princesses. So, the social cognitive theory of gender development is another reason for this study. The researchers say that this is complex and shaped by modeling and direct tuition. Modeling is when children see what the princesses are doing, and those actions are socialized to be either girl or boy stereotyped actions. So, when princesses are seen cleaning and cooking, this is characterized as a task for girls. Direct tuition is when parents and peers respond to the child engaging in these gender stereotyped behaviors. In general, children are praised for behaving in gender stereotyped ways that match their genders and discouraged from gender inappropriate behaviors. The third reason for this study was the common themes presented in Disney movies. We see high amounts of exposure to the thin ideal of body image. So the princesses have incredibly small waists and perfect skin, even though this isn't really realistic. And we also see frequent prosocial behavior from the princesses. There's about one prosocial act per minute, according to the researchers. An example of this is when Belle sacrifices herself in order to save her father. For the method of this study, the researchers gathered 198 children and their parents from different parts of the US. The people varied in race, although almost 80% were white, and they varied the most in socioeconomic status. So some were from inner city schools, some were from the country, and some were from suburbs. With these people, the researchers administered parent and teacher questionnaires as well as student tests. So, in the parent questionnaires, parents were asked what kind of media their children were exposed to. So, that could be princess movies, Disney princess toys, or Disney princess clothing, how much time their children were exposed to the media, if their child exhibited gender stereotyped behavior, what the parents' body esteem was, if the child exhibited prosocial behavior, and how they mediated the media. And all of these questions were asked both upfront and then again 1 year later. Similarly, teachers were asked if students engaged in gender stereotyped behavior and if the student engaged in prosocial behavior. And for the child test, the students were asked to pick which toy they liked the most, they liked a little, or they didn't like at all. And half of the toys were stereotypical for girls and half were stereotypical for boys. The children were then assessed for gender stereotypical behavior based on which toys they chose. So the researchers found that for both boys and girls, princess engagement was associated with female gender stereotyped behavior and more prosocial behaviors after engaging in Disney princess media. The longitudinal results included no effect on prosocial behavior for boys or girls, and a negative effect on body image for girls and not for boys. And this is likely because boys are more associated with the muscle man body image rather than the thin ideal. The findings regarding parental mediation are that high active parental mediation led to more female gender stereotyped behaviors for both boys and girls, more pro-social behavior for boys only, and higher body esteem for boys only. In the author's discussion, the author points out that gender stereotyped behavior isn't necessarily bad, but it can lead to fewer opportunities for girls to learn. So if girls are afraid of getting dirty, they might not learn as much from the outdoors, and this can also carry over into adulthood. For adults who self-identify as princesses, they are more likely to give up on challenging tasks, less likely to work, and are highly focused on their appearances. With that said, the authors insist that more research needs to be done. This study only examined effects of 1 year after, and the authors suggested that another study should be done over a longer period of time. It would also be important to study how Disney princess media affects the androgynous behaviors in boys. The researchers also mentioned that the study can be improved by having a more diverse population, by recording how children were playing with the princess toys, by noting the context and the content of the play, and recording how long the children attended schools to evaluate the accuracy of the teacher questionnaire. Because the longer a child is at a school, the more the teacher will know about the child and the better his or her data will be on the child. And then finally, it can be improved by asking the parents what they talked about when they engaged in active mediation with their child during the Disney princess media exposure. So with all that said, my initial thoughts are, why doesn't Disney princess media affect pro-social behaviors longitudinally? Pro-social behavior was elevated at time 1 with exposure to Disney princess media, so I'm curious what happens in between to make that go away. I also found it interesting that active parental mediation led to both positive and negative consequences. The positive being higher body esteem and more pro-social behavior for boys, and the negative being more gender stereotyped behavior for both boys and girls. I would think that the results would all be positive with parental mediation, but I guess that depends on what the parents are talking about with their children. And that kind of brings me to my last thought of, why didn't the researchers record what the parents and their children were talking about during active mediation? I would think that the content of these conversations would have a great impact on what the child learns from the media, and it would be an important piece of data for this study. So here is the abstract and the citation for the article, and thank you guys for listening.